Seeing the system doesn't mean you have to fix everything. It means you no longer have to live on autopilot. Welcome back to the Revolution Resolution. I'm Anna, and today we're talking about what happens after clarity. How understanding the system can begin to change the way you move through your actual everyday life. In the last episode, we talked about consequences, about how rules that were written into law, enforced by institutions, and protected for 250 years don't just shape outcomes, they shape behavior. They teach people what happens if they speak up, if they don't comply, if they refuse to stay quiet. So a natural question comes next. How do I live differently once I see that? Not in theory, but in practice. Living differently starts with noticing where fear has been doing the deciding. For many of us, consequences taught habits that now feel like common sense. Staying quiet in meetings, even when we have something to say. Over-explaining ourselves to avoid being misunderstood. Choosing safety over honesty. Learning to overlook harm rather than name it. Telling ourselves, this isn't the time or this isn't the place. These aren't personal shortcomings. They are learned responses to a system that made consequences real. Clarity allows you to recognize those moments, not to judge them, but to see them. Living differently doesn't mean pretending consequences don't exist. It means understanding why they exist and choosing more intentionally how much they get to control you. For example, you might speak carefully instead of staying completely silent. You might set a boundary, even if it makes someone else uncomfortable. You might stop laughing things off that don't actually feel funny. You might decide not to participate in conversations or practices that rely on demeaning others. These are not dramatic acts, but they are real ones, and they don't have to look the same for everyone. For some people, living differently looks like naming harm out loud. For others, it looks like refusing to pass harmful expectations on to our children, to coworkers, to people we care about. For some, it's about rest, choosing not to push past exhaustion just to appear productive. For others, it's about care, prioritizing relationships even when they aren't rewarded or recognized. This is where relationship matters. The system didn't just teach us rules. It taught us that stepping outside them could isolate us. So living differently often means practicing connection on purpose. Finding people you can be honest with, checking in before assuming, listening instead of correcting, staying in conversation when it would be easier to withdraw. Change doesn't begin with grand gestures. It begins with how we treat one another once the old rules stop making sense. So here's something to sit with this week. Where do you notice yourself acting automatically out of habit or fear of consequences? Where might you pause just long enough to choose something differently? And what would it look like to let clarity guide you instead of reflex? You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be awake. That's how new ways of living take shape. Thank you so much for taking this time with me. We'll keep building from here, one intentional choice at a time.